Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm just spending some time here working on the skins in the inside center console, and I got Piper out in the garage helping me. Well, at least trying to help. This process is probably one of the harder pieces to figure out. This is the drawings, which they're kind of helpful, but once you clean the skins, then you sort of lose. I mean, you can write the numbers down on them, but um, there's a little the directions don't clearly show sort of the direction of the fold in the top. It's a little bit tricky, so you have to work on that. I had to reattach the center console there where the actuator joins in, because I had to remove that to get the hard lines for the fuel lines the way I wanted. So I got that taken care of. What I'm doing here is I'm making little pockets for the gaps in the support braces on the side there. I know I can cut some of the styrofoam I'm using to hold the back of the airplane up, but it's just there's a lot of little corners and it's a lot of cutting. So it's like, I'll just get some UV expansion foam that I made sure that it holds up against heat and UV and whatnot. So expanded that into those areas. I'll trim that back once it dries, and then it'll be a nice fit. Here I'm putting the grommets, or the the parts you protect from the metal, the sharp metal, with the plastic pieces that fold in there, and then just tacking the ends of them closed with a little heat gun so that they don't unravel or come loose or anything like that. I've really been struggling with this part for quite some time. The elevator autopilot was just really jammed in with a lot of wires, and I just wasn't happy with how it was fitting. And again, the instructions are not real clear on how this goes together. It's sort of like, we'll run the wires and make it look pretty. Midwest panel builders gave me some instruction on it. It was a real rough sort of like, run it through here. Okay, well, I did that. A little bit more on that. This part here, this was for the overflow tank for the, I think it's the coolant fluid. For some reason, I couldn't find the other part to attach this to the firewall. So I only had one of the brackets to zip tie it to. And I could have called up Sling and had them send me a new one out, but I had all the material on site, and it was really easy, just one fold and a couple holes, and then an elongated hole, and slap it in place. Not a big deal, so I made that. Ammeter is going in here, and again, this is another one of those where Sling doesn't provide the ammeter. The Avionics provides that. The heatsink is the part that I was trying to show there. So it's just up and above. It comes off of lane A, and I suspect that's probably because it carries more current during normal operations, and so that heatsink has to be removed. This part right here is Midwest Sky Sports has made a drop-in plate replacement or part that does essentially what I'm trying to do here. If they had had that part 8 weeks ago when I was starting this process, I absolutely would have gone that route. To have a part that I can just plop on there and not have to worry about all the little junctions that go in there. That whole unit replaces all the hoses that go in this part of the build. So the idea is to make it, compact, tidy, not have a lot of extra hoses or anything like that running around. And if you're thinking about doing something like this, again, this is sort of off book, because the book is with fuel lines and lots of hoses and whatnot. This is a really, I personally believe that this is a better way to go. And if I were to do it, I'd talk to Midwest Sky Sports. I'm not affiliated with them. I don't get a kickback. There's none of that goes on. I just really like what they did. And of course, a friend of mine sent it to me like a week ago, and it was like, oh, well, shoot, I would have totally bought that. So the real trick on this is cutting the hoses to size and then fitting them, but they almost have to all be straight lines, because some of these turns get really tight, and you can't get the aluminum line into the the flange maker there and have it make the flange, because the bend is you have to have the bend in there. So I had to move the fuel filter over a little bit with all of its stuff so that I could get it all together. And at this stage of the game, that's a little earlier. There's a couple parts on there that I've replaced. So that's all good to go. This is the banjo adapter for the Behringer brakes and how that fits together, as well as it comes out the top and loops in. So I spent some time working on that. I know that the wheels are not quite bolted on correctly yet, and I've got the bolts sitting aside, and I just haven't revisited that. So time to get some more stuff done inside the plane, and this is in order to proceed forward with the side skins inside, I had to get the vents into place and then clean. Actually, these are the last 4 sheets of aluminum to clean for the entire airplane. Everything else after this process is going to be the firewall forward, the cowling, the glass or the plexiglass around, and all those other parts. I've run out of aluminum to apply at this point in time, which is, when I was cleaning this, it was sort of like, wow. I mean, that whole phase of the process is done. Of course, since it's not installed yet, I still get to play with Clecos, but it's getting harder to show people what the Clecos were for. Because when people would stop by, they had never seen Clecos before, or didn't know how they work, and of course, I hand them the tool and show them how it works so that they can sort of get the idea behind it. So here I'm just basically getting the forward portion of the fuselage inside skins in place. One trick on this, if your holes are not lining up on the bottom, if you press up from below on the forward portion of the fuselage, that will help close the gaps so that the rivet holes line up. I didn't realize that, and then Aaron stopped by to show me that trick, and I was like, oh, well, that totally makes sense. And again, it does get a little harder for those holes to line up towards the back, or towards the back of the airplane. But once you get the first 2 or 3 of them in, it's really not too bad. I did find that the skins are a little bit tight on the sides, but totally manageable. You just kind of have to wiggle it in place. And then I'm also putting the insulation foam on the sides here. I bought some extra foam from Aircraft Spruce, and I'm just about out. I need a little bit more, but I'm trying to stretch with bits and pieces where I can, because I'd really prefer not to buy any more, because it's kind of pricey and you've got to buy it, I think, by the foot. But if I got to buy more, I got to buy more. That rear skin, for whatever reason, the lip on the end just didn't want to fit up against the rear portion of the fuselage there. So it was only like maybe an inch of material that was overlapping, so I just grabbed the Dremel and just lopped it off, and there's plenty of material still to rivet together there. And it's just right below the seat belts, or the rear seat stop. So so I just did a quick test fit and then popped it out, and I think this is where I'd send it back over to clean. But I did have some problems with the seatbelt attachment on the right side. There's where I'm trimming that piece off there. But I did have some problems with the seatbelt attachment. It's a little wonky how that goes together. It almost feels like it should have more room, but I think once it's in place, then it's not intended ever to really be adjusted. And so I don't know. I'll be repping that back up here. Anyway, so my solution on the autopilot and the autopilot servo and the rear wiring here. The problem that I had, so these are click bonds that I'm putting in place. What they are is they're little clips with a super strong adhesive on it. Basically, once they're in place and dried, they are not going to move. I ran into them at Oshkosh a couple years ago, and in my opinion, they've got a pretty fantastic product. It's a little pricey. It's actually a lot pricey. I'm not happy about that, but because you got to get like a gun and to extract some of the fluid and things like that. They do have some pouches that you can mix up the material with, but at the end of the day, if you've got more than 2 or 3 of them to put in, you're going to need to have some sort of way to extract the adhesive out of it. Anyway, so I put those clips in there. What I did was, because all the wirings were running through that one space, it got really pinched. It probably would have been okay, but my main concern really is vibration and rubbing when you're dealing with the wires, and that whole channel is everything for the aft portion of the airplanes. It's got the XM weather, which is not as critical, but then you've got your COM1, your the transponder's down below. The GPS is based off the top. Servo trims, just everything runs through that channel. So what I wound up doing was breaking up the run. So the wire bundle that came from Midwest that was pretty much set in place. Once I closed out the back, and if you remember back a couple of videos where I was concerned because I was going to leave that back open, but once I put the canopy on, there was just no way to go back. Well, of course, I revisited this after I did that part. So there was no way for me to go back and remove the wiring as it was in place and to resolve this. So my workaround for this was I broke apart the extra wiring that was not part of the Midwest wrap, and then put the click bond tie wraps down to the base for just the Midwest run, or the cabling that was done by Midwest. This really freed up a lot of room. I feel much more comfortable about this, because then what I did is I took all of the COM wires and the static port and ran that through the front channels ahead of the autopilot. The cabling from Midwest was really kind of short, so I didn't have a lot of options on it. So I had to get it in as tight as I could. But by moving the COM and the static and all the extra wiring forward, it really relieved a lot of that pressure. Basically once it comes through, then it goes down the center channel. And again, I use some click bonds to tie wrap the runs going north-south in the airplane, so that I can tie wrap the cabling away from the control rod, because I don't want that having any interference in there. Of course, it's a pain in the butt getting the autopilot in and out. There's 2 bolts that are blind basically underneath the servo. The top 2 are pretty easy to put in, but the bottom 2, man, try to do that as early in the fuselage build as possible, and make sure you get it right. Because this is just there's certain projects where it's like, I know it's going to be a real pain in the butt, so I just put it off as long as I can. Well, then this was as long as I can do it. I need smaller hands, or I don't know, something to be able to get this to fit, or to be able to see what I'm doing. So a lot of it's just, you might see me grab a hold of a small magnetic tip that I have, because you can sort of guide the bolts and or washer and or nut into place and get it tightened down. But with persistence, you eventually get there, and then I set the skin back in. I needed to really get that done before I finish this part of things, because once I close this side up, I'm not going to have access to any of so I got the wiring that comes from the canopy down, and I've still got to terminate that. That's another section where I'm not entirely sure how that goes, so I've got to spend some time figuring that out. But I know that there's, 4 or 5 wires that are at that point that need to get wired up, and I did run 1 extra set of wires to the canopy. Running the wiring now is easier than when the whole plane's, or the canopy's all the way on. So anyway, that's where I'm at with the project. I'll have another video here probably in another week, and some exciting changes that are coming along here. Thanks for tuning in.